the energy level and the type of energy here is very different to what's going on over there at the World Bank, IMF, perhaps a lot more feminine energy as well. I feel like I've been kind of rolled out at the end to mansplain everything, and also so much passion. I mean, you guys don't take a breath in between your, there's just so much to say, so I really appreciate it. The other thing that's distinctive here is that there's data, there's stories, there's actual local experiences, and I love that approach to global issues. I think we've had a phase, a few decades perhaps, when global basically meant buzzword bingo. You started with very general terms, and I could go through an entire speech without saying anything concrete, but just do a random word generator of buzzwords. So really, really appreciate it. I was typing away on my phone because I loved the examples and the data. I mean, I had no idea about the numbers, how precipitously the numbers decline as you go from various degrees of fragility. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate not only the opportunity to speak, but also to sit there and listen to you. Bangladesh is, for those of you who don't know, is unique in many ways, and it's a large number of young people crammed together, cheek to jowl. That's the context, and then you superimpose the fact that it's also one of the most climate vulnerable places in the world. From Bangladesh, some of the global dialogue on climate change seems ludicrous, because you're talking about average temperature rise, you're talking about net zero by 2050. Climate change is here. It's just not distributed evenly, and Bangladesh is exhibit number one when it comes to the physical hazards of climate change that buffet the country on a regular basis. So if we talk about climate finance, again, over there at the World Bank, you'll hear about the gap being in the quantum of trillions, but how the actual money that gets to where it needs to go is really trickles. And within that, adaptation doesn't get much time under the spotlight. It's a lot of it is about mitigation. And again, from Bangladesh, if you look outwards and you go back to first principles, what caused climate change? It's cumulative emissions. Where did those cumulative emissions occur? What is the marginal emission of an average citizen in Bangladesh versus some other countries? And therefore, why the focus only on mitigation and not as much on loss and damage or on adaptation? And then you superimpose some of the other countries that you spoke about today, which is the fragile and post-conflict states. And then it becomes a way more complex challenge. At the core of the challenge is that there is market failure. Climate change, in the economic modeling, the traditional modeling of CO2 emissions, CO2 equivalent emissions, is modeled as a market failure, which by definition means that they can be supply for something and demand for something, but the two don't match, the two don't meet, because there is no ability to price that risk correctly. So there are projects that are clamoring for climate finance, and there is money that's waiting to be deployed for climate finance, but the two don't meet. And that is the market failure here. So what causes markets to develop? That I think is the challenge for all of us. Related to that is the concept of resilience. And I think I should, even though this is not directly a climate change story, but I have to contextualize Bangladesh in the political context that it finds itself in. So we had a student-led uprising just over a year ago. The previous government fled. We stepped into the breach as an interim government. We're enacting some institutional reforms. We've given ourselves a deadline. There will be elections in February, and we'll hand it over to an elected government. And the reforms that we're talking about are mainly around governance, mainly around institutions, mainly around ensuring that people's potential can be realized. The impediments at the moment are some physical, some structural, but a large part of it is just corruption, institutional degradation. And the government is headed by Nobel Peace Laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus. He has many things to his credit, one of which is he has a concept of the framework of the 3 zeros. He talks about zero poverty, zero emissions, and zero concentration. Zero poverty is a reminder to us that the previous fixation we had on GDP growth is a reductionist concept and can be downright dangerous if you're only focused on average GDP and not looking at what's happening to the bottom cohort. And that's why zero poverty forces you to think about the inclusive or otherwise nature of your growth. Zero emissions is shorthand for the need for stewardship when it comes to nature and climate and air quality and water quality and so on. And zero concentration, sure, of wealth, but also zero concentration of power. One of the hallmarks of corrupt autocratic systems, like the ones that we have maybe, is that people in various government positions have unlimited power that cannot be challenged in the moment. And so one of the reform initiatives we have is how do we institutionally design offices so that no one holds extreme power at every level. It's not just about whether you have a dictator at the top of government or not. So I come back to now, within the institutional construct, how do you build markets? And why do we not get markets? And it's because mainly of information asymmetries. So those who have a project that they need funding for are sometimes not able to convert the project into a financial product. Is it a loanable product or an investable product? And how do I define that and credibly communicate that? And so for that, I draw inspiration from what the Singaporeans have done with this transition taxonomy. So it's driven by the 3 Ds. So in order for any market to be created and to flourish, you need data, you need definitions, and you need disclosures. So do we have, what's the basis for information? Let's collect the data. How do we categorize the data? Let's agree on some definitions. What is fragile? What isn't? And then let's agree on some disclosure standards so that we all have access to the same information based on which we can price the risk accordingly. And so I think we need to really focus on enriching that taxonomy and maybe have a more detailed one for conflict-affected states. Before I was in government, and the place I will be going back to when I'm done here is at the London School of Economics. We have a project. There's a wonderful professor, Dr. Mary Martin, and she runs a project called Human Security Business Partnership. She's written a book called Corporate Peace, which I really like. And that framework I just mentioned, I'm on their advisory board, and it's on the website. You'll find more detail on that. And that is an attempt on how to provide structure to fragile and conflict-affected states, so that well-meaning multinational corporations, well-meaning banks, other financiers, do not just jump in headlong into a conflict or a post-conflict area and inadvertently flare things up because they don't know what the context is. So it's a very good structured way of approaching that. So that's what I think we need to roughly do, is try and standardize it as much as possible, because we do really need money at scale coming to places like Bangladesh and for causes like adaptation. So I thank you once again for your time, and thank you. Very nice talking to you.